There are people out there who will say the Nightmare on Elm Street series should have ended with Dream Warriors, the third film, and that it wrapped everything up nicely, and it should have ended as a trilogy. You'll hear that from time to time. I do wonder, though, if, as fans, they absolutely, honest to goodness, 100% mean that. Maybe they do. Maybe there are people who are perfectly content to only really acknowledge the series up to number 3, only want those in their collection, and I guess that's perfectly fine. That's their choice to do so. Like with any movie series, there can always be a line you have to draw in the sand, or any TV show for that matter. Maybe there were the first few seasons of a show that were good, but the rest are just unwatchable crap. It's purely defined by your own tastes and preferences. And with that, part of me can see where someone would be coming from, because yeah, part 3, Dream Warriors, it did wrap things up. We had the last of the Elm Street children fighting against Freddy and winning, and it brought a closure to the conflict between Freddy and the original heroine, Nancy. And Freddy was defeated in a way that made sense, that seemed permanent, and his unholy remains were put to rest and buried, sending his soul to hell or wherever. And bringing the whole nightmare to an end. I get that. It makes sense. But at the same time, I think there's just too much good that we get with some of the later sequels in this series, as imperfect as they would become. And I honestly don't think I would trade that for a reasonably wrapped up trilogy. I wouldn't. No better film in the original string of sequels exemplifies that than A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 4, The Dream Master. And if we must take a look at it from from that point in time, from the perspective of the producers, the studio behind the movies, and anybody making money off these things, obviously there had to be another after Part 3. Each one made more money than the last. The Freddy Krueger character became this huge, popular, cultural icon. And there was a fan base. There was a demand for more. So of course they were going to make a part 4. They'd be stupid not to. But the question would be, how do you keep it going? How do you continue the story after the last movie resolved a lot of the plot points? How do you keep up that momentum? How do you do it with a huge demand for it that needs to be fulfilled immediately, with a fairly inexperienced director at the helm who's from some country that's not even America, with a Writers Guild strike looming like a bad omen, and a release date set before the camera even begins rolling? The Dream Master does a fair bit of reaching when it comes to the plot, but overall it's decent given the circumstances. And it does open things up quite a bit for new possibilities in this series. Kristen is back, not played by Patricia Arquette, but this time by the actress Tuesday Knight, which is a cool name, by the way. It's sometime after the events of Dream Warriors, maybe about a year or two later. She's living as normal of a life as possible. She's back in school, has new friends, she has a boyfriend, Rick. She keeps in touch with her Dream Warrior buddies, Joey and Kincaid, who also survived from the last film, and things seem to be going all right. The plot gives focus to other characters besides Kristen, and we get to see a little bit of Rick and his sister, Alice, with their home life. Their mother passed away, their dad is an alcoholic, and Alice spends a lot of her time daydreaming, and she's kind of fixated on living in her dream world, almost preferring dreams to the waking life. This is something that captures Kristen's interests, and the two have some good scenes together in the first act of the movie. And there are some other characters too, but let's face it, for the most part they're just fodder. Kristen is still living with the fear that Freddy might be coming back, even still dreaming about the infamous Freddy house, still using her unique power to pull people into her dreams. She'll bring Joey and Kincaid in at the first sign of trouble, much to their dismay. They just want to move on. They have better things to dream about. They just want to forget, and they warn Kristen that dreaming about him might bring Freddy back. So keep her mind off him, and they definitely don't want to rock the boat. But they tell her to just get a grip and to just stop worrying because they defeated Freddy. He's dead. He's buried. He's gone for good. There's no way he's coming back. Absolutely, positively, no way, no how. He is not coming back at all. So when Freddy comes back, he's right back where he left off, aiming to kill the last of the Elm Street kids. He only has 3 left on his list. Kincaid, Joey, and Kristen. Seems a little short-sighted, but this time around, Freddy has a larger plan in mind. He's looking to expand his horizons, murder-wise. And it's probably worth mentioning how he comes back this one, how he's resurrected and returned from the grave. Well, this is Kincaid's dream, and he wakes up in a junkyard where Freddy is buried. His dog is there. The dog is digging up the ground. The dog pisses fire. The ground opens up, and Freddy's bones are in there, and there's a pretty cool special effect where you see his bones growing and his skin coming out and kind of reanimating, almost like that scene in Hellraiser. So I thought that was really well done. And, okay, a lot of people at this moment will be saying, really? A dog pisses fire, and that brings Freddy back? Give me a break. Well, it's kind of a silly moment, but I wouldn't go as far as saying as that his resurrection is in direct relation to flaming dog piss. Like, I wouldn't say, ah, man, if only Kincaid stopped that dog, all of this would have been avoided. No, it's just that Freddy's always kind of been a showman. Presentation is key. This is just the fucked up shit he cooked up for Kincaid's dream. That's all. He's already back at this point. He even says, "You shouldn't have buried me. I'm not dead." If anything, I would say that it was in a large part the fear that Kristen had about him was indeed what was stirring him up again. As we know, Freddy feeds off fear. We've seen it before, and it's not always necessarily the fear that he creates, but he thrives off teenage angst and anxiety, and it could also very well be the Alice character that plays a part. He could be picking up on her distress and her vibes, and I think it's a combination of the two that kind of shakes him into being again. Because with this movie, we find out that Alice is kind of this gatekeeper. She has this dream power of her own without really knowing it, so Freddy can use her to get to non-Elm Street kids. So I would say it was this perfect storm of these two characters crossing paths, and each with their own dream powers, Kristen with her persistent fear, Alice with her at-home troubles and her daydreaming, that allowed Freddy to come into being again, to kill off the last of the Elm Street kids and to have an opportunity to kill even more. Because even from the very first film, we know Freddy can only exist from the power that's given to him. Or maybe it was dog piss, I don't know. Does it really matter? Freddy's back, that's all you need to know. While this movie definitely doesn't have the cleverness or the psychological edge of the original Wes Craven film, and it doesn't really have characters that are as good as we've seen in Dream Warriors, I do like how it maintains a certain kind of unpredictability to it. It sets itself up to have you think it's about Kristen again as the main character, having to beat Freddy once again, have the Elm Street kids back, fight back again, and win again. But no, it's all the Elm Street kids that are dead before the 30-minute mark. Kincaid is the first to go in the junkyard, and he puts up a good fight. Like, he drops a fucking car on Freddy, which was cool. Doesn't do too much, unfortunately, and then he's gutted. But at least he gives Freddy a little bit of lip before he goes, which I liked. He says, "I'll see you in hell." And Freddy says, "Tell him Freddy sent you." I thought that was a good scene. Joey dies incredibly easy, being tricked once again by a beautiful naked lady. It happens. And Kristen is left alone with no more support, no more Dream Warriors, and it's kind of a sad demise. Even though they switched actresses, I still felt invested in that character. So it was a bummer to see her go. But in that last scene with her, you kind of see where this new film is going and what Freddy's plan is. He's taunting her in the boiler room, suggesting she pulls in a friend into her dream to help her, which is what he wants. He wants her to panic and pull Alice in because, I guess, with whatever rules are established with Freddy, he can't haunt the dreams of non-Elm Street kids. But if an Elm Street kid pulls in a non-Elm Street kid, he's allowed to cross that threshold. You even see sort of the symbolism, I guess, of that part when Alice is pulled in and how she's broken through this brick wall, sort of. So she's no longer an outsider. She's now that final pawn in Freddy's plan to get more kids, I guess. So Kristen is killed. She's thrown into the fire. Into the fire! Freddy collects another soul, but Alice collects Kristen's power. So that's what's set up here. Alice is the gatekeeper. Freddy can only kill kids when she's asleep. She's the dream master, and Freddy collects the souls of the kids with each death, and Alice collects their powers. And that's pretty much it. So it's an interesting premise, if not a little convoluted. But hey, there was a writer's strike. This is what we got. Any excuse to get Freddy to knock off more kids, right? And for all its faults, this movie boasts an impressively high body count, if that's your thing. And the dream scenes are full of really innovative special effects that are really gruesome and cool. And they each come with the patented Freddy irony and sense of humor. There's that scene in the school where Sheila, who's an asthmatic, she encounters Freddy, which already is a fucking creepy and perverted scene, as is, but then he grabs her and he sucks her face, completely sucking the life out of her until she's just this empty sack of nothing, which is pretty goddamn horrifying. There's that scene with Rick, who spends his spare time in the garage practicing martial arts. He falls asleep, and in a not as impressive as it could be, but still neat scene, he does kung fu battle against an invisible Freddy Krueger. Still better than the Halloween Resurrection. And of course, there's the disgustingly memorable scene where Debbie, the girl who's afraid of cockroaches, she gets turned into a giant cockroach herself, and is squished in a roach motel. So I guess they were taking a little bit of inspiration from Kafka at this point. And Freddy is packed with a seemingly unlimited arsenal of wisecracks in this one. Like, he must have attended the Schwarzenegger Academy of One-Liners. It's almost insane. We get classics like, "How's this for a wet dream? I want to draw some blood. How sweet, fresh meat. You flunk. Rick, you little meatball. You can check in, but you can't check out. Well, it ain't Dr. Seuss." And much, much more. He's spouting them out like it's going out of style, which, in a way, it is with this one. This was the Nightmare on Elm Street in the series where it was at its absolute peak in popularity. There was a certain expectation at this point. People were going into the movie to see Freddy, see him cause his carnage, do his thing, and yeah, crack some jokes. And it delivered on that. Of the original 7 films, this one made the most bank, so it must have been doing something right. It has problems plot-wise and maybe tone-wise too. Not everyone's going to see the shot of Freddy flipping on those sunglasses at the beach and think, well, this does Wes Craven's original film justice. No. And I get that, I do, but I still think this is a good movie. Robert Englund does his shtick as Freddy, and I think he does a great job of it. And I really like the Alice character, played by Lisa Wilcox, with a plot that maybe becomes a little bit too complex for its own good. There's a lot of distractions, and it's easy to overlook the appeal of this character. In addition to Freddy and his hijinks, a large appeal always has been about the protagonist character in these movies. The character who has to find their own self-worth and work up the courage to do battle with evil. And I think we get that with Alice. And I think the progression that this character makes from the beginning, in being this meek, soft-spoken wallflower, then going through all this, finding her own self-assertion, not just against Freddy, but even against her alcoholic dad, which is a great switch when you see how much power he has over her in those earlier scenes, completely belittling her, as she can't say or do anything about it. Then to those later scenes near the end where she's taking action and we see him. He's kind of just this weak and pathetic character, this sad old drunk who at this point he has no real say in anything that Alice is doing or anything that she's setting out to do. So she's grown there. And in a tiny way, I think that that growing up with the character, that kind of growth and how she sees her dad, maybe that rings a little bit of truth to how someone with an alcoholic family member may perceive them in adolescence compared to how they see them when they grow up, maybe. But she develops with a very gradual progression that's easy to overlook, and she becomes this strong, pretty badass character, almost so gradually with so much else going on in this movie plot-wise that it happens without realizing what an impressive transition this is with this character, and how well Lisa Wilcox pulls that off in her performance. So I think something like that goes a little bit uncelebrated in regards to Part 4. What it all amounts to is Freddy has all the kids' souls, Alice has their dream powers, and it leads to the final showdown in Alice's dream in a church where they face off. It's not exactly clear if Freddy is 100% meaning to kill her, or if he's just intending to defeat her, humiliate her, keep killing all her friends, or if she's already done her part in his scheme and he doesn't really need her any longer at this point and could dispose of her. But it would seem that he still needs her alive, so there's a lot at stake for Alice at the end. She feels a lot of guilt and responsibility with each death, because if it weren't for her falling asleep, Freddy wouldn't be able to get at her friends and kill them. Which brings up some questions, like if Alice were really the only one standing between Freddy and his mass murder of a bunch of new kids, would she consider doing the unthinkable? Would she think maybe if she killed herself, that prevents all those deaths, all those murders? She would be sacrificing herself for the greater good. But maybe that would have brought the movie to a different level and made it all the more darker. But forget that. What if she just left town? Like, what if she moved to a secluded cabin in the middle of nowhere? Would Freddy still be able to kill people then? Is there a geographical limitation to these rules that have been set up? I don't know. Maybe I'm just thinking about this too much. Anyway, the fight at the end is pretty good. There's some kick-ass hand-to-hand combat, and Alice is finally able to defeat Freddy, this time using mirror. Yeah, mirror. It's sort of this plot point that's not really developed that well about Alice trying to remember this nursery rhyme her mother told her when she was a kid, and then at the very end she finally remembers how the nursery rhyme ends with the line, "Evil shall see itself, and it shall die." So it's Freddy's own reflection that kills him. Not as impressive as the burial from Part 3, but it gets the job done. And at least it's foreshadowed nicely enough with the rhyme and with the scenes where Alice has her bedroom mirror entirely covered with photos. And with each death, she takes more down and sees a little bit more of her own reflection each time. So before her final fight, the mirror is cleared completely, and she sees herself. So we see good seeing its own reflection, recognizing its worth, and then we see evil seeing its own reflection, recognizing the grief and despair and torment it brings, allowing the souls stuck inside him to have a chance to break free. And it's a really cool effect. All the souls of the Elm Street kids, they fight back at Freddy, they take him over, they grab at him, completely tear him apart, which looks really, really cool. And I guess the curse is broken. Freddy's gone, and the souls he's consumed are now at peace. So not bad. It's a nice, happy ending. Alice wins the day, And she gets the guy, Dan, which is also kind of interesting because, at least out of the original 7 movies, we don't really see the romantic subplot end with the couple walking off completely scot-free without some kind of final scare of some kind. We see Freddy's reflection in the fountain at the end, but that's about it. So all is well, and kind of interesting too how like almost every 80s movie was about the nerdy social outcast guy trying to get with the popular girl. Hell, that was basically the plot of Nightmare 2, if you ignore the gay stuff. So here's this story that's the other way around, with the nerdy social outcast girl winning the day and getting together with the major league hunk, Dan, from the football team. So there's that. And this really has to be the most quintessentially 80s one. From the music to the fashion to the pop culture references, Dynasty again, to just the overall tone. And I like that, and I have a soft spot for it in that respect. If nothing else, A Nightmare on Elm Street 4, The Dream Master, cemented Freddy Krueger as the pop culture icon in film even further, rightly boasting the Newsweek quote stating Freddy as the most popular cinematic maniac since Darth Vader on the home video releases, and really driving that point home. Rennie Harlan brought us an entry of deprived and innovative imagination with a sense of energy that never stops to take a breath, resulting in an extremely and relentlessly entertaining horror show. The screenplay, co-written by Oscar winner Brian Hegland, though hindered by the writer's strike, at its best brings us some nice new ideas and developments that appropriately move the series forward, and at its worst, probably doesn't make as much sense as it could have or should have if they were given some more time to polish the writing off a bit. The end result is a movie that may be a little uneven, but basks in the evil fun of Freddy Krueger, making him front and center, and still giving us a good hero to cheer for in Alice. So for some, this is just another lousy sequel that made Freddy into too much of a jokester. This is just the one where Freddy's brought to life by flaming dog piss and is killed by a fucking mirror. But for me, and I know I'm definitely not alone here, this is a very satisfying entry in the series, and one of the best sequels in the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise. So, A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 4, The Dream Master, that's my review. Thank you for watching. Maybe I come off as a bit of an apologist to this movie, but what can I say? I really like it. I do legitimately think it's a good movie, and I enjoy it. Probably it does have, admittedly, a nostalgic value to it, but all of them do. All the Nightmare on Elm Street films have some nostalgia for me, for sure. I've mentioned this in other videos, but I would rent them from the video store as a kid, like all the time. And this was probably the one. This fourth one was probably one I'd watch the most and rent the most, just because it was so entertaining. And there probably was a point where it was my favorite of the bunch, just because of that high entertainment value. Huge gruesomeness, great Freddy action in this one. What can I say? And I know I'm not alone. So what do you think of Nightmare 4? Comment below. I want your comments. Let me know what you think. I want the debate to go on. Is this a good movie or not? So I'm very curious to see what people say this point in time. But yeah, that's my review. Thanks for watching. As usual, comment, rate, subscribe, all that great stuff, and stay tuned for more. There's still more reviews to come. Part 5 coming soon, my review for that. Until then, I'll see you later.